Director of the Grace Hudson Museum. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you tonight to our 2020 special virtual gala program. The Grace Hudson Museum is operated as a partnership between the City of Ukiah, which owns the property, the buildings, the collections, and hires the staff, the Endowment Board, which manages the museum's endowment portfolio, and the Son House Guild Board, whose main mission is to raise vital funds to support the museum's exhibitions, programs, wild gardens development, and marketing. The annual gala is a cornerstone of the Son House Guild's year, and it usually nets about 50% of our annual programming budget. This year, the COVID-19 pandemic forced us to cancel our in-person dinner fundraiser, which usually includes live auctions, silent auctions, raffles, and paddle pledges. And so we turned to producing a one-hour program to connect to our visitors and our stakeholders. We'll be asking for your support tonight, but we'll also be presenting you with a diverse program featuring history and the arts to remind us all why the museum is important to the life of our community and to the greater culture beyond. I'm delighted to say that many people have already donated money for this gala in the week leading up to the event tonight. To you, we thank you for your generosity and foresight. For the rest of you watching, and who want to make a donation, we have staff members available on the phone waiting to take your calls. You can see below me the numbers you can call: 707-467-2836, that's the main museum number line. Or you can go to our website and find our information on our homepage about the gala and a button so that you can donate live online. And if you'd rather just focus on watching the show tonight, that's fine too. We'll be accepting donations for this gala all through the next week, either on the phone, online, or just send us a check in the mail. So what will you be seeing tonight? Well, let's start by talking about our gala theme, From the Strength of Women. We were inspired by this year's 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, securing the right to vote for most women in the United States. This milestone achievement in our nation's history got us thinking about the important strong women who were very influential in the idea, the creation, and the growth of the Grace Hudson Museum. You'll learn about 6 of them this evening in 3 to 5 minute documentary videos made by our new curator, Alyssa Bode. You'll also get to meet and hear from 4 strong and talented local women artists: a singer, a poet, a curator, and a basket weaver. And with the help of some pre-recorded messages from community members, we'll be taking a minute or two to ask you for donations throughout the evening. So let's jump in with our first documentary video. It's all about Clarina Nichols, who was Grace Hudson's paternal grandmother. Clarina was a mother, a writer, a businesswoman, a pioneer migrant who settled in Potter Valley, and she was a dedicated women's rights advocate in the 19th century. I'll see you back in a few minutes.
Clarina Nichols was not only Grace Hudson's grandmother, but a women's rights activist. As a young child, Clarina saw how women were discriminated against, as her father interacted with destitute women as part of his civic role. Later, during her own marriage to Justin Carpenter, Clarina experienced the plight of many women firsthand. Justin was cold and unable to provide for the family. He even kidnapped their children. Clarina had to support herself and her kids, earning a fraction of what a man earned. She began to write for newspapers for additional funds. Eventually, Clarina divorced Justin with the help of his own family. Given these experiences, Clarina thought it was imperative that women have economic rights so they could support their families. At the time, women had no claim to their own property once married. A husband could treat his wife however he wished. Later, she would advocate that women deserved the right to vote because they were citizens, not because of their role as caretakers. Her writings began to attract more attention, including that of George Nichols, editor of the Windham County Democrat. Their courtship developed through correspondence, and they married in 1843. When he became sick, she took over many of his duties, at first using his name. It was only later that she became emboldened to write under her own name and to speak out, traveling across the country. She supported the three main causes of the day: women's rights, temperance, and abolition. Her ideas also inspired one male reader to bring them to his fellow Vermont state legislators, who passed the first women's property rights bill there in 1847. Meanwhile, abolitionists and pro-slavery supporters flocked to the Kansas Territory so they could vote to decide if Kansas would enter the Union as a free or slave state. Joining the abolitionists, Clarina moved there with her family. Although working the land was difficult and many family members fell ill, Clarina found satisfaction in the hard work. She continued to support the causes she cared about. She helped enslaved people escape along the Underground Railroad. She gave speeches. She spoke out at the Kansas Constitutional Convention in Wyandotte in 1859, advocating that women's rights be written into the state's foundational document. Although most of her resolutions were ignored, some rights were written in. These included the right of married women to inherit, control, and bequeath property in their own names, and the right to vote in school district elections, making Kansas a pioneering state in women's rights. During the Civil War, Clarina moved to Washington, D.C. to help with a labor shortage. She served for a year as a matron of a home for Black orphans and widows left destitute by the war. Mary Todd Lincoln recognized her for her efforts, and family lore has it that she gave Clarina this jewelry box. Later in life, Clarina began a correspondence with her longtime friend, Susan B. Anthony. When Anthony called for personal accounts of the early days of the women's rights movement, Clarina was given an entire chapter in the history of women's suffrage. As Clarina's health declined, she moved to Powder Valley, California to be close to family. She continued to write until her death in 1885. Throughout her life, she had constantly fought for women's rights, abolition, and temperance, even as a working woman. Although she died 26 years before white Californian women were granted the right to vote, 35 years before all white women were granted the right to vote, and 80 years before the Voting Rights Act was passed, ensuring that people of all races could vote, her earlier struggles laid the foundation for these later successes.
And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our first guest artist. She's an accomplished and talented singer and musical theater artist, and she will appear a few times throughout the course of the show to sing songs about strong women and female empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, Jody McLeod.
Hi, my first song is from the musical Come From Away. It is called Me in the Sky, and it is written by David Hine and Irene Sankoff. This song is from the point of view of Beverly Bass, who was the first female captain of an American Airlines commercial plane. She was also the first captain to have an all-female crew in the history of jet aviation. So she was in the air during the tragedy of 9/11, and she had to land her plane in Newfoundland, Canada, and this is her story. My parents must have thought they had a crazy kid, 'cause I was one of those kids who always knew what I wanted. They took me down to the airport to see all the planes depart, and watching them fly, something inside of me was starting. I was 8 when I told them that I'd be a pilot. But I was too young and too short, and there were no female captains, and my father said, be patient, he said, just see what happens. But I took my first lesson, came down from the sky, told my father I'd fly for the rest of my life. Then I got my first job, flying for a mortician in a tiny Bonanza, just a corpse and me, $5 an hour For flying dead bodies, I had to climb over their faces just to get to my seat. Then suddenly the wheels lift off. The ground is falling backwards. I am suddenly alive. Suddenly I'm in the cockpit. Suddenly everything's changed. Suddenly I'm not too young or too short, and the passengers in the back don't complain. Suddenly I'm flying company charters. Suddenly everything's high. Suddenly there's nothing in between me and the sky. American Airlines had the prettiest planes, so I apply as a flight engineer. But the World War II pilots, they all complained. They said girls shouldn't be in the cockpit. Hey lady, hey baby, hey, why don't you grab us a drink? And the flight attendants weren't my friends back then, and they said, are you better than us, do you think? Well, I kept getting hired, and the World War II crew, they retired, and the girls all thought much higher of me. 1986, the first female American captain in history. Suddenly I'm in the cockpit. Suddenly I've got my wings. Suddenly all of those pilots protesting me, well, they can get their own drinks. Suddenly no one is saying stay grounded, looking down, passing them by. Suddenly there's nothing in between me and the sky. Suddenly I've got an all-female crew. The news talked and made headlines across the world. Suddenly it stopped. No one's saying you can't, or you won't, or you know you're not anything, 'cause you're a girl. Suddenly I'm getting married, and we're putting pins on the map where we've flown. Suddenly I am a mother, and suddenly shocked at how much they've grown. Suddenly I'm wondering how my parents would feel seeing me teaching men to be pilots. 'Cause suddenly I am a senior instructor, and somehow I'm 51. Suddenly I'm flying Paris to Dallas, across the Atlantic and feeling calm, when suddenly someone on air-to-air traffic says at 8:46 there's been a terrorist action, and the one thing I loved more than anything was used as the bomb. Suddenly I'm in a hotel. Suddenly something has died. Suddenly there's something in between me and the sky.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Wheeler, President of the Sun House Guild. Thank you for joining us for Grace Hudson Museum's first ever virtual gala. The annual Fall Gala is the Guild's primary fundraising event for the museum, and although the format is new and different, the needs remain the same. On behalf of the Guild, I hope you'll enjoy this presentation, and thank you for your generous support.
Thank you, Tony. And we are back to ask for your help. We should have the numbers right across the bottom of the screen. Telephone number to call if you want to make a donation by phone. You can go to our website at gracehudsonmuseum.org to make a donation online. You can just mail us a check tonight or early this week. So far, we have received gifts ranging from $25 to $5,000. No gift is too big, but certainly no gift is too small. So give what you can, help out the Grace Hudson Museum. Also wanted to let you know we are recording tonight's program, and we plan to put it on YouTube by probably around Tuesday, the September 29th. So if you're watching this video as an archive version, know that you too can still make donations to support our gala. All right, I think we're going to transition into the next part of our program. I want to welcome to our stage Teresa Whitehill, who is a former Ukiah Poet Laureate. You don't get to do that unless you're a pretty darn good poet. She's a wonderful graphic designer and a broadside printmaker. I asked Teresa to write a poem for this occasion with one request, that it maybe reflect on creativity in a time of pandemic. Please welcome Teresa Whitehill.
Thank you, David. Ballad of the Graffiti. Praying in my mother's house, a place where I was a child and am now an older woman. Living in a time of crisis that has been unraveling since the invention and deployment of napalm, and those forces of commerce that generate wind tunnels out of high-rise buildings clustered into steel and concrete canyons, the heavy underbellies of freeway overpasses wrapping around neighborhoods, where dolls can still be left out on the sidewalk overnight in a form of mythic forgetfulness that includes weather. I kneel in front of the refrigerator where she used to keep 6 half-gallons of milk. The neatly waxed cardboard towers printed with bright colors and messages, stories of health but not necessarily happiness, warnings of the potency of the vitamins and fats, and she, who in my childhood used to stand in the doorway while we ran out to the street when we heard the approaching bells of the foremost milkman. She who would buy a half wheel of cheddar cheese and exchange her bottles empty for his bottles full, while we chose ice cream bars and sherbet and blinked in the approaching darkness. It was during her childhood after the war, she was fond of telling us, when things were still thin, that butter used to be delivered whiter than pig fat, and the coloring would come in a separate container. As the oldest child, it was her job to mix the two together to get the yellow butter. The war came after the Depression began. The Depression followed a period of infamous prosperity, a hilarity of excess and dancing, a decade of beaded skirts and jaunty headbands. I am praying in my mother's house, but I can't find the words yet. That period of prosperity followed a worldwide catastrophe in which 1 million people died from an ungovernable flu. But we're only just realizing this now. Ordinarily, this would worry me, this ability on our part to wholly forget. However, I find myself calm, an unreasonable calm. It is not yet morning. I'm still in the midst of a dream. Light has not yet begun to penetrate the margins of the studio. I compose poems from what alphabets I have. Wooden letters made from pear wood, mixed with smaller letters founded from a blend of metals. Thoughts of my mother's house come to visit me, words of my considerable family, of my philosopher and geologist friends, and their friends, the artists and the Buddhist teachers and the raconteurs. I make my prayers from the knowledge sunk in the collections of museums and research libraries, laboratories and airplane hangars. Let what has been carefully preserved in collections of art and knowledge be cross-referenced with the graffiti found in the wind tunnels of the city. Now, I say now. Let what is written on the walls of the alleys of this city and that city, abandoned of smoke, begin to be deciphered. Touch the chest where the heart still expands against its solemn burden. Touch the forehead where the conceit of the brain confounds itself. Let the writing on the walls begin.
Wow. Teresa, that's such a rich poem. It hits me hard with a notion of personal memory, collective or cultural memory, connecting the present with the past. And the big conceit is graffiti, which pops up towards the end. I wonder if you could talk to us about how you got into the poem. What was your way in? What was your process throughout? And how did all these images reveal themselves to you?
Well, David, when you first proposed this about 6 or 7 weeks ago, I went through my often typical process of generating work, and I write every morning. So I began to do free association writing as part of my morning ritual. Back at the beginning of the shelter in place in March, I realized I wasn't going to be able to get to the health club, so I needed to up my game. I took a bicycle that a friend loaned me, and I unlocked my back gate, and I went out and I started bicycling on the railroad tracks on the new rail trail that was just put in just about a year ago. And throughout the spring, I got a chance to see the whole unveiling of all the wildflowers, which was magnificent. And at the same time, there was another kind of blooming going on there. There was quite a bit of graffiti that would come and go. And I developed a manuscript that was called Wildflower Graffiti. So when it came to this moment, this poem, what rose up, what I learned from writing the poem was that I felt like it's an opportunity to mix different disciplines and different walks of life, and that's going to be where we're going to find some answers to hard questions.
There is it feels like a call to action at the end of the poem, to engage in the broader cultural conversation. Teresa, I hate to say it, we need to move on to the next segment. I could talk to you for a half an hour about this poem, and I hope we can do so in the future, either a virtual program or in person when we're open again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, David.
We're going to move on to the next part of our program, which is a set of videos featuring our longtime curator, Karen Holmes. The first some of you may have seen on social media about a month ago. It's Karen giving a walk-through tour of the World of Frida, our summer exhibition, which was only open for 5 days. Less than 200 people got a chance to see it. The second video is a conversation I had with Karen about a little over a week ago to talk about Frida and also to talk about Karen's career at the museum and her impending retirement.
Hi, I'm Karen Holmes, the curator at the Grace Hudson Museum, and I'm about to take you on a quick behind-the-scenes tour of our current traveling exhibit, The World of Frida. How did I curate the show for our space? I began with a model of our gallery and made scale images of its 117 pieces of contemporary art inspired by the life and work of Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. In the end, I chose 69 pieces by 62 artists out of the original 95 participating. Frida was known for her self-portraits, and many works here mimic them. A challenge was to soften the effect of so many staring faces by showing other things associated with Frida, like her painting supplies, or the wheelchair that she needed after many surgeries resulting from a bus accident. I hung some pieces together because they take elements of contemporary life and tie to iconic Frida images, creating a shock of recognition for a modern viewer. Some pieces are grouped because they reference the same painting by Frida, in this case, Las Dos Fridas. Some are near each other because they are based on the same classic photograph, such as Frida on Bench, photographed by Nichols in 1939. Or they are based on a photo of a young Frida, taken in 1919 by her father. It's interesting to see how different artists interpret the same foundational work. I was also intrigued how two artists could start with the same base material, like these dollar bills, and develop them so differently. Remember the cat. Again, these pieces are placed near each other so you can compare them easily. I put these works together to provide a very personal view of Frida's life, depicting her back brace and toiletry items from her home in Mexico City, Casa Azul. Coming to the center of the exhibit, you will find pieces focused on symbolic animals and the love of animals that Frida explored in her own work. This reproduction of Kahlo's painting, Me and My Parrot, was a favorite image for several people who got to see the exhibit in person, done in incredibly fine kimono stitching. And here's the black cat again, taken from Frida's self-portrait with thorn necklace and hummingbird. What I aim to do overall is to get the pieces talking to each other, to create a sense of energy in the room. Look at the hot pink of the print on the title wall, echoed by the hot pink of the print with butterflies on the back wall. That pulls you into the space and makes you want to explore. And synergy is created by echoing subjects such as the two sets of double-hung portraits on the back wall. Or follow the gaze of Frida on this decorative box to the mannequin's head with flowered headdress in the case across the room, echoed by the figure in the photograph hanging on the wall beyond it. Communication starts happening between the pieces. We're so sorry we haven't been able to show you every artwork on exhibit, but be sure to check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our website to see past and upcoming posts on individual works and artists in the show, and to get museum updates. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm with Karen Holmes here in the Sun House. And Karen, that was a wonderful video you and Alyssa made. It's such a shame more people couldn't see it in Ukiah. 180 people, I think, saw it. Why do you think the exhibition is important? Why do you think Frida is important? And what would you have hoped our audience, had it been larger, they could have taken away from the show?
Well, I think Frida Kahlo is a really strong woman, and she survived a lot of difficulties in her life that she overcame, and I think that's a great example for all of us. She was an important woman artist in a man's world, and she succeeded. And I think that she provides a real inspiration not only for the artists in the exhibit, but for all of us who look at the work. We can take her strength and apply it to our own lives in this difficult time. We can make something beautiful out of our difficulties and make something that people can learn from, even if we're suffering ourselves. So I think she's a really important figure.
And has become widely beloved across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, you've decided to retire at the end of this year. And after 20 years, some odd years at the museum, you've worn many hats. You've been a registrar, graphic designer, exhibit designer, curator, archivist, historian. Of the many experiences and accomplishments that you've had here, which are the ones that stand out the most for you?
Well, I've really enjoyed getting to know the Carpenter Hudson family through the collections here. We have an incredible set of papers and photos, original documents, and I enjoyed going to places that members of the family had spent part of their lives in, including places that Clarina helped escaped slaves come to the Underground Railroad, John Hudson's birthplace, Grace Hudson's time in Honolulu. I got to experience that. I also enjoyed working with exhibits, developing them from just an idea to an actual show that took up 1,700 square feet of physical space and brought it to life for other people. And of course, I enjoyed working with a lot of collaborators.
Days of Grace was a wonderful exhibition and book, the publication which you co-wrote with Sherry Smith-Berry.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel the museum has changed in the 20 years you've been here, and what are your hopes for its future?
I think it's become more professional in the years since I've been here, also due to Sherry a lot, and I think that it's gotten a more of a national reputation. It's also become more important to the citizens of Ukiah, to the community. It's a real gathering place, a place people can learn and have fun and meet their friends, and I hope all of that still continues. And For the future, I hope that there will be the funding in place to increase staffing and to take care of the property and the collections the way they should be. And so that we can continue to serve researchers, get the word out about us through their work, and really make it known around the world.
Grace and John's story is very important to you, isn't it?
It is.
Well, and now the sad question. What will you miss about working at the Grace Hudson Museum?
Well, mostly I'll miss all the people, my coworkers, past and present, and collaborators, museum professionals, historians, artists, researchers. I really enjoyed working with all of them, and I'm lucky to have had that experience, and I hope I can continue doing some research in the collections here. You never stop researching.
Many more letters of John and Grace Hudson to read.
Right.
Well, Karen Holmes, thank you so much for all the work you've put into the Grace Hudson Museum, all your contributions. I want to say on behalf of the museum and the city, we're very grateful to you. And on a personal note, I've only had a chance to work with you 3 years, but I've thoroughly enjoyed every minute of that. I find you to be a consummate professional and incredibly talented in all the areas I discussed earlier. So thank you so much for everything, and very best wishes for your future.
Oh, thank you, David.
Hi, my name is Jared Karp from beautiful Boonville, California. I'm a member of the Anderson Valley History Museum Board and the Grace Hudson Museum member. Local museums serve a vital role as centers for art, creativity, memory, and community. Also, museums are fun. Please consider supporting the Grace Hudson Museum, a crucial Mendocino center for culture, community, and the arts.
Also, I might add, it has a jazz program on KZYX, so he's no stranger to pledge appeals. In the same way that KZYX keeps us informed, the Grace Hudson Museum is a place of information and a place to exchange ideas. It's a place where people of all ages can gather to be stimulated by art in all of its forms. Now, some of you may be asking, the museum's closed right now, why are you asking us for money? What are you doing? Well, the staff is hard at work developing virtual programs that we'll be rolling out this fall, and I have more to say about those specific programs in our next appeal segment. But we're also developing virtual programs to help with teachers and school children now that our kids are doing online learning. So there's a lot to be done. We typically try to plan 2 years ahead for exhibitions and programs, and all of that work has to happen now, and all of it needs money to be able to happen. We're going to now go to our second of 3 short documentary videos. This one features Helen McCowan Carpenter, Grace's mother. It also features Grace Carpenter Hudson herself, and also Gracie Carpenter, who was Gracie's niece by her twin brother Grant. So let's take a look at that.
Helen Carpenter, daughter-in-law to Clarina Nichols, was a pioneer, businesswoman, and founding mother of Ukiah. She migrated with her husband, A.O. Carpenter, from Kansas to California in a wagon pulled by oxen, becoming pregnant with her first child on the way. As the Carpenters began to homestead, Helen was awarded the first teaching certificate in the area. She taught for 10 years and later served as the only woman for many years on the local Board of Education. In 1869, she moved with her family to Ukiah, where they established a photography studio. As her husband sought work away from home for long stretches, Helen managed the studio to help provide for the family while taking care of her 4 children. Helen wrote stories for the Overland Monthly, in part to create demand for Pomo basketry and knowledge of Pomo culture, which the family monetized through the sale of baskets in their collections. She also helped found the Presbyterian Church and assisted with the Methodist Episcopalian Church in town, while fundraising for local fire equipment and Ukiah's Carnegie Library. Perhaps because her mother was so independent, Grace Hudson seemingly never questioned her ability to become a professional woman at a time when it was rare for women to take on such a role. At a young age, she traveled to San Francisco to pursue an arts education. After returning home and marrying John Hudson, she began to paint the local Pomo peoples. Although she and John often reflected colonialist ideals about Native peoples, they also often supported their Pomo neighbors in ways that left the Hudsons on the outskirts of Ukiah society. Grace's chosen subject matter and her high level of skill made her stand out from other artists. When she became overworked, she went to Hawaii for a rest cure and became rejuvenated by her travels and new subject matter, the Native Hawaiians and Asian women and children she encountered in the islands. However, wherever she went, Grace always returned home to Ukiah. She loved exploring the outdoors, often with Mascot at her side. In 1911, she built the Sun House with John to suit their lives and professions, using the money she had earned to support them. In her lifetime, she painted over 600 numbered oil portraits of Pomo Indians, a lasting legacy today. Although Grace Hudson never had children, she was an aunt to her siblings' children, including her namesake Gracie, daughter of her twin Grant Carpenter. At 17, Gracie eloped against her family's wishes and was effectively disowned. Her husband tragically died just 5 years later, leaving her to support her 2 children on her own. A talented violinist, she crossed the country, making her living by playing with orchestras and providing music lessons. As a young girl, Gracie had been separated from her mother. Her father, Grant, had divorced her mother on the grounds that she was neglecting her duties as a wife when she went home to tend to her own sick mother. Later in life, Gracie put out an ad to reconnect with her mother and was successful in finding her. Though her life had more than its share of hardship, Gracie's resilience continued in the tradition of her great-grandmother Clarina, grandmother Helen, and Aunt Grace. It was Gracie's daughter, Patricia Rabinowitz, who gathered and saved many family documents, allowing us to share these stories with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Joanie McLeod.
This song is titled Door Number 3. It is originally written by Sarah Bareilles for the musical Waitress, but it was eventually left out of the final production. This song is about a woman, Jenna, who is deciding to leave the only relationship and life she's ever known to see if she can be happy somewhere else. Door number 2 is for you, little lady. Is it all that you dreamed of? How, if I knew, I'd have been there waiting, I'd have jumped up and screamed out. Now here I am, with my feet in the sand, in a body that won't move. The tide's coming in, and I'm bound for a swim in a pair of cement shoes. He takes what he can, what he wants, doesn't matter if it's ever been given. I took the bait and a chance on a man sold by the boy that he lived in. And I was wrong to believe that strength makes you strong. And I had hoped in a change I would see in us both. And now I'm heavy, he lifts me but never once carried. Door number 2, I've already walked through. Ask me a question, who could have guessed that I'd be here at this crossroad? Plain to be seen, but it's all up to me. I'm no longer alone though. Nothing's changed, and I see it more every day. Nothing moves, it's a game to be played and to lose. And now I'm heavy, unsteady, but maybe I'm getting ready. And this might catch fire and char the ground. I might live this up to only be the one who's gonna get let down. Will I be enough to get this on its way, to find some higher ground. Before the waters rush, I've got to make a change, or else I know I'll drown. Baby, look around. Door number 2, I've already walked through. I want to see what's behind door number 3.
Hi, I'm Katrina Kesson, the Executive Director of the Greater Ukiah Business and Tourism Alliance. Art is so important to us, especially during a crisis and these tumultuous times. It is the thing that speaks to us above all else. So please support the Grace Hudson Museum.
Thank you, Katrina. Arts are definitely an essential part of life in our community. We have so many wonderful artists in the Ukiah Valley and in Mendocino County. And the arts can be a refuge and an inspiration in difficult times. I mentioned earlier we are planning a fall program series, and I can tell you that we'll be opening the Wild Gardens on Saturday, October 10 and Saturday, November 7 from 10 to 3. We'll have activities in the garden, so make your plans to come by on those days. We're also developing a virtual book club evening, a virtual tour of the Sun House, and we're hoping to do a virtual holiday program with storytelling and maybe an appearance by Santa. So these are the things we're working on, and we're also anticipating we're going to open one of these days again, and we're already looking forward to our exhibition schedule to follow. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to our stage Corinne Pierce, who is a Pomo basket weaver and educator and a resident of Redwood Valley. Corinne, you brought some baskets with you, and we'll get to those in a moment. But first I wanted to ask you about the material which is typically used in Pomo basket making. And I know that we have plants in the museum's wild gardens which you have harvested some of that material from.
Yes, I have. I actually chose what I brought very carefully today. Everything on the table and on the ground right here, except for the beaded baskets, was actually made with material that I harvested from the basketry garden at the museum. It's been a couple of years getting established, especially with the dogwood, which is this beautiful, beautiful red color right here. It can only be harvested in the winter time. You have to wait for the plant to be dormant. The problem with it is that animals like to eat it, so it's very hard to get it in long lengths. This is actually the first time that I've gotten it long enough that it can go into a full-size cradle, and that's because of the basket garden, because the deers aren't in there eating that up. So that, and then the willow that's in this, and the oak shoots, which didn't come from the garden but came across the street in the parking lot at the Grace Hudson Museum. So that's why I brought these. I brought them full-size, doll size, and I brought some miniature ones, and these were all made with the material from the basket garden.
Another material we have in the wild gardens is sedge. Did you use sedge in any of the baskets today?
I did. Sedge is the main material of when you think of a basket, a Pomo basket. The tan color, the cream color is sedge. It's a bit overgrown in the garden, still has been for some years, but it's getting better. And all of these are miniatures. This one is actually made by Annie Lake, who is also a resident of Redwood Valley and a member of my tribe. There are some of her baskets in the permanent exhibit there. And these three are my quarantine baskets that I made from sedge root. Normally you have willow inside, but once they get down to this really little tiny size, it's actually just another piece of sedge. So it's a whole sedge root with split sedge root and little glass beads on it. And this one is one of the first baskets that I made from the materials in the basket garden. It actually was part of another museum exhibit and gallery exhibit down south. But it's my seaweed harvesting basket made from the gray willow in the garden.
Is there any symbolism or whatnot in the way the patterns are in the baskets, the differentiation between colors?
No, not so much. Well, in tradition, going back 80 years, 100 years, all of the ones with the colored sticks in were for boys. And then there's some on our quilt behind us that hangs at the museum that are all white. They have no color, and those were traditionally for girls. There's different styles. This is a very pomo basket. This cradle style is unique to tribes that are considered pomo, although there are some weaving differences, some styles, like there's a Lake County style, a Sonoma County, and a Mendocino County. They all look the same from far away, but up close the weaving is slightly different. I always think that this is just my ancestors really showing off, because we're the only people, the only tribe that have this shape and also that utilize this weave. This is completely unique to our tribe. So I still make these. I make a lot of them. We have a lot of babies still coming.
I think one of the unappreciated aspects of basket weaving, basket making, is the harvesting of plants. When did you learn to start the craft of this, and how did that go?
Actually, it was just California Indian Days on Friday, and when I was 9 years old, 35 years ago, I made my very first willow basket. And ever since then, thanks Sherry for being the curator, I really grew up with the museum and having access to my ancestors' baskets directly, like my aunties, my grandmas. I just taught a class about this to a whole bunch of first graders, and they asked, so when I harvest material, so willow has to be processed, and it takes a whole year. It has to wait a whole year. Sedge the same thing, and that's, so planning far ahead. It's a lot of work. That's why we're the best.
A lot of patience as well.
Yes.
Well, Corinne, I'm sorry to say our time has run out. We're moving on to the next segment. It's been a real pleasure having you with us today, and you've been a great friend of the museums, and we hope to catch up with you again soon.
Thank you so much.
We're now going to move on to our final documentary video. This one features Barbara Eversole, who played a huge role in the vision, fundraising, and construction of the Grace Hudson Museum, and then again, its expansion 15 years later. We're also going to feature in this video Sherry Smith-Ferry, the longtime director of the museum, my predecessor. In her 20 years here at the museum, she put an indelible mark on the museum. And finally, we're going to revisit Karen Holmes, who has made many contributions to the professional growth and maturity of the institution. From the video, we'll be joined again by Joanie McLeod with another song.
Barbara Eversole, a fourth-generation Ukiahan, helped shape the museum as we know it today. When she started, there was no museum building. One of her first roles was organizing docents to provide tours of the Sun House, Grace Hudson's home. She also helped get the Sun House recognized on the National Register of Historic Places. Barbara Eversole had a larger vision for the Sun House. She envisioned the Sun House Cultural Center. She spearheaded this effort over 6 years to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to establish, design, and construct the museum building. She provided leadership, serving for 2 terms each as chairman of the early Sun House Board of Trustees and also as president of the Sun House Guild. She helped organize fundraising events, solicited donations, and wrote grant applications to secure funds. In 1984, ground was broken for the new building. Its 8,400 square feet would provide an exhibit area, climate-controlled storage space for art and artifacts, offices, a community meeting room, and a gift shop. In 2001, after another fundraising campaign, an additional 2,400 square feet were added to accommodate 3 new galleries. By then, Barbara was no longer in a formal leadership position, but she continued to weigh in on important decisions affecting the museum. In 2015, the Wild Gardens project began at the museum to tell another story. Barbara's vision for a Sun House Cultural Center set the stage for the growth of the museum over many years to come. As a child growing up in Sonoma County, Sherry Smith-Ferry remembers seeing Grace's work and the positive way she portrayed Pomo peoples, something Sherry valued, being part of a local Pomo Indian family. Little did Sherry know then that she would become the first Pomo director of the Grace Hudson Museum. In the 1990s, Sherry secured a grant and began to study the important historic and cultural materials at the museum, including John Hudson's field notes and collections of native materials. The result was her dissertation on pomo basketry, which earned her PhD in anthropology. Sherry began as a curator, and within a year she was offered the job of directing the Young Museum. Early on, Sherry saw the potential to explore the museum's complicated connections to pomo peoples. Grace and John Hudson both made their mark and their living through befriending, studying, and in Grace's case, painting pomo peoples. Sherry used her intellectual approach and cultural background to produce original research, publications, and exhibits, elevating the professional status of the museum. During Sherry's tenure, she oversaw the expansion of the museum and the creation of 3 distinct galleries, including a gallery dedicated to Grace Hudson's artwork, pomo basketry, and the history of the Carpenter and Hudson families. Her vision and leadership has also led more recently to the creation of the Wild Gardens. Featuring native plants and local ecosystems, the Wild Gardens serves as an outdoor classroom for visitors to learn about the traditional lifeways and environmental stewardship of pomo peoples. Karen Holmes has also made invaluable contributions to the museum's growth and intellectual standing. Karen came to the museum with a master's in library and information studies and training in archival practices. During her work on the publication Aurelius O. Carpenter, Photographer of the Mendocino Frontier, which highlights the many photographs of Grace Hudson's father, Karen's interest in learning about Grace and her family grew. Since then, in her 25-plus years at the museum, Karen has become an expert on the Carpenter-Hudson family. Karen's love for research has resulted in catalogs, exhibits, and articles, including one on Grace's most famous painting, Little Mendocino, and its many copies. Partnering with Sherry Smith-Ferry, she did in-depth research on Grace's time in Hawaii, uncovering previously unknown information about this time in Grace's career. Together, they co-authored the award-winning catalog, Days of Grace, California artist Grace Hudson in Hawaii, and developed an exhibit of the same name that traveled from the Grace Hudson Museum to the Honolulu Museum of Art. She also researched the story behind and curated the exhibit Artful Liaisons, which connected a young Grace Carpenter and other artists and their works in new ways. Karen has created many exhibits for the museum, one of her favorites being one on assemblage art. Featuring 7 different Mendocino County artists, it was a challenge to organize, but its enthusiastic reception from museum patrons was very rewarding. In addition, her graphic design skills have elevated the museum's exhibits and promotional materials. Karen will retire at the end of this year. We are enormously grateful for her talent and hard work, which will be celebrated as well as greatly missed.
This song is called Armor, which is also written by Sarah Bareilles, and it is about the foundation of armor that has been built up by women holding up other women. And I'd like to dedicate this song to our late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Let it begin, let Adam in. Step 1, original sin. Underneath the leaves, Adam found Eve. Both of them found something sweet under the apple tree. Then it was over, roads divide. Step 2, learning how to lie. Let me ask a question for present day. How the hell did Eve end up with all the damn blame? All the damn blame. To all the dirty looks, the kitty cat calls to the ones who tried to throw us up against the back walls. Let me tell you something you'll understand. Only the little boys tell you they're a big man. To all my sisters and all our friends, we have to thank them, please. Strength means blessed with an enemy. Oh, my armor comes from you. You make me try harder. Oh, that's all I'll ever do, ever do. My armor comes from you. incredible ones who came before me. Brought poetry, brought us science, sowed quiet seeds of self-reliance, bloomed in me, so here I am. You think I am high and mighty, mister? Wait till you meet my little sister. Oh, my armor comes from you. You make me try harder. Oh, that's all I'll ever do. My armor comes from you. You make me stronger. Hand me my armor. What you didn't do to bury me, but you didn't know I was a goddamn seed. You don't scare me. I am of the earth. I'm so tired of your empire. Blind men only set the world on fire. Sad you can't see it. You brought the flame. Here comes the phoenix. You make me try harder. Oh, that's all I'll ever do. My armor comes from you. You make me stronger. Hand me my armor. You make me try harder. Oh, that's all I'll ever do. My armor comes from you. You make me stronger. Hand me my
Hello friends, I'm Sage Sangiacomo, the City Manager for the City of Ukiah. In 1975, leaders in our community recognized the uniqueness of this special place and struck an agreement to purchase the Hudson House with the goal to maintain it as a historical museum. With a lot of hard work and extraordinary visioning over the past 45 years, we've gone beyond just preserving the Sun House and have developed a beautiful facility that has become a focal point for art and cultural appreciation and exploration. This effort has been fostered through a unique public-private partnership between the City of Ukiah, the Sun House Guild, and the Grace Hudson Museum Endowment. Moreover, the foundation to the ultimate success and sustainability of this partnership comes from individuals like you that contribute funds and volunteer countless hours. I'm thankful for all of those before us that work to support this wonderful asset, and I'm honored to be part of this journey with you to ensure we continue to build this legacy. Friends, I look forward to when we can take off our masks, reopen the doors, and come back together. Until then, thank you for your continued support and ongoing commitment to the Grace Hudson Museum and Sun House.
Thank you, Sage, and the City of Ukiah. Well, we're just about to wrap up the program, and I want to say I've been told throughout some of these breaks or through some of the artists and stuff that we've been getting donations consistently throughout this evening, both on the phone and online. So for all of you who have given tonight, thank you very much. We so appreciate your support. I want to take a moment to give a big thanks to the Sun House Guild Board that do so much throughout the year to support the museum. Very hopeful that at this time next year we'll be able to have another in-person sit-down dinner gala with our auctions and everything. There's nothing like having people at the museum. There's no comparison. Also want to mention, as a note, that most of the Sun House Guild board members, both past and present, have been very strong women. Now's the time to thank our sponsors once again. the Eversole family, Savings Bank of Mendocino County, Fuller Digital Media, Dave's Bike Shop. I bought a bike at Dave's, you should too. And of course the city of Ukiah. And a special thanks tonight to Kirk Fuller for directing the program and for all of his technical support. Thank you to all our guest artists, Teresa and Corinne and Joanie, and thank you most of all to all our museum supporters. Joanie's about to take us out with Amazing Grace, and we're going to roll the credits in a moment. So for everybody out there, thank you and good night.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first